Welcome viewers. In this lecture, I'll be discussing about how do we manage environment using internal and external strategies. Learning objective here is understanding external strategies as well as internal strategies, understand difference between co-opting and coalescing, how and when we apply rationing, describe reasons for popularity of interlocking directories. It is important to understand why management seeks to control its environment, a role of internal external environment and various control strategies. It is a comprehensive action taken by management when faced with an unfavorable situation or a very uncertain environment. So, we refer to environmental scanning approach, techniques for buffering organization from input side, how an organization would apply rationing strategy, differentiate to understand between co-opting and coalescing strategies, what are the reasons for the opportunity of interlocking directories, and why there is a political actions committee to help industries manage their environment. Discuss on internal strategies and later discuss about external strategies. Then we will also focus on external strategies actually change the environment. Both internal and external strategies create techniques available for managing environment. In the quest to adapt to environment, organizations often use certain strategies such as rationing products and services, geographic dispersion in the face of uncertainty. Therefore, we look at internal strategy of rationing. When uncertainty is created by the way of excess demand, management may consider rationing products and services, that is, to allocate output according to some priority systems. What is an internal strategy of rationing? Hospitals, colleges, post offices, restaurants often ration beds. Hospitals, they try to give a rationing for beds for non emergency admissions. When there is a disaster such as earthquake or flood or incidents of fire, or during the pandemic, there were lack of availability of beds. So, in most serious cases, how the hospital could accommodate patients during the time of emergency using the strategy of rationing. College administrators frequently use rationing to allocate students to popular programs. The demand for business management courses have exceeded. There are demands for courses on artificial intelligence, machine learning. So, the supply of seats available in many of the colleges and universities. In response, entrance requirements have frequently been raised as a way to address to the demand, setting up of extremely high cutoff percentages such as for some courses which are much in demand. These are examples of rationing strategy. The post offices resort to rationing, particularly during the peak festival rush. Speed post and registered post take priority, and ordinary post is not an option which is adopted. It's not unusual for better restaurants to require reservations. The use of reservations act to both ration and smooth demand for dining tables. In India, government organizations often use rationing for providing subsidized goods to people. There is another internal strategy called geographic dispersion. Now comes yet another internal strategy, that is geographic dispersion. Environmental uncertainty sometimes varies with location. There is clearly more political uncertainty for a business firm operating in Lebanon, Beirut than the one operating in Bangalore. To lessen the location induced uncertainty, organizations can move to different community or lessen risk by operating in multiple locations. Historically, unions have been strong in certain states in India, such as in West Bengal, and weaker in others. Many business firms have responded by moving their operations away from such union intensive locations. In so doing, they have also reduced one uncertainty from their environment, such as union induced strikes or walkouts. To cite one example, the Tata Nano car project in Singur is the Relevant example for the geographic dispersion strategy, West Bengal was viewed as anti-industrialization state, and then state government wanted to reform that image. For this, the state government allowed Tata to build its factory for its Tata Nano project on farmland in Singur. The government had acquired 1200 acres of land, which included 997 acres from 13,000 unwilling farmers. These 997 acres of land was then leased to Tata Motors to set up its nano plant. There were 6 sites which were offered by state government to Tata Motors, and the company had selected Singur as the chosen site. Singur is the most fertile belt in that region of West Bengal. Almost entire local population in this region was dependent on agriculture, with approximately 15,000 people earning their livelihood from it. The number of jobs to be provided by Tata Motors then was in 1000s, which was clearly insufficient and that caused discontent. This act was received with much opposition from the activists, the displaced land owners, and the opposition parties in Bengal. Thus, due to all this unrest, any form of project work by Tata Motors seemed impossible. It was due to this time that various other states such as Haryana and Maharashtra approached Tata to set up the Tata's nano factory in their state. Finally, Tata Motors had to take the decision for relocating nano plant from Singur to Sanand in Gujarat, and the Tata Nano project in West Bengal was terminated forever. On the international level, environmental uncertainty due to the US government's changing policies on import restrictions is the primary reason why Japanese car manufacturers like Honda, Nissan and Mazda have built factories in United States. Now we have completed the internal strategies and we'll start looking for what are the external strategies or to mitigate uncertainties in the environment. So now we turn to the strategies that directly seek to change the environment to make it more favorable for an organization. And these include the following strategies like advertising, contracting, co-opting, coalescing, and lobbying. So these are 5 strategies that we will look at. The first one would be advertising. Advertising is a strategy that management uses to reduce its dependence on fickle consumers and new alternatives offered by the competitors. Procter and Gamble spends millions of dollars each year to promote the products like Tide, Ariel, and dozens of other Procter and Gamble's products. Though extensive advertising is being done by Procter and Gamble's management, uh, they seek to reduce the competitive pressure, stabilize demand, and allow it the opportunity to set price with less concern for the response of its competitors. The organizations can build up brand loyalty. The brand can create an image to lessen its dependence on consumers. Several brand name products or services such as American Express card, Diet Coke, Revlon, uh, and Federal Express overnight delivery are actively promoting through advertising strategy. Maybe the classic example of advertising is creating a following and sustaining demand of products over time is Bayer's aspirin. The content of aspirin is the same regardless of the brand name. Yet, the manufacturers of Bayer aspirin has convinced a significant segment of aspirin buyers that Bayer's is a pure aspirin. It is superior to the competitors and justified a price from 2 to 5 times higher than the generic brands of aspirin. Similarly, in late 1980s, Nike created the Just Do It campaign, which helped them to surpass their main competitors like Reebok. At the time, Reebok was selling more shoes than Nike. And the next type of external strategy that we would discuss is contracting. Contracting protects the organization from change in the quantity and price on either the input or output side. For instance, management may agree to a long term fixed contract to purchase materials and supplies or to sell a certain part of the organization's output. Airlines contract with oil companies to buy fuel on a fixed term contract, thus reducing fluctuations in availability and price. For instance, major soap manufacturer contracts to sell tens of thousands of cases a month to its standard detergent to a large discount chain that will be marketed under the chain's private label. This assures the soap manufacturer of a certain amount of sales, reduces its dependence on the fluctuating preference of consumers. Similarly, an almond grower enters into an output contract with an almond packer. Thus, the producer has an assured buyer for output of nuts, and the packers of nuts is happy to try the particular product. Copting is another strategy to reduce uncertainty. Organizations may resort to, that is, absorbing these individuals or organizations in the environment that threatens their stability. This is most frequently accomplished in business firms through selective appointment to the organization's board of directors. Research demonstrates that composition of corporations board can be explained by considering the organization's requirement for various types of environmental support. If an organization primarily needs capital, you can expect to find a greater percentage of directors from banks, financial institutions, insurance companies in order to have a representation. Regulated industries are overseen by government agencies, and these industries respond by disproportionately loading their boards with lawyers. Following this particular strategy, one can expect organizations facing labor uncertainties to appoint union officers to their boards. Those firms whose survival depends on government contracts often seek formal government officials for their board. Organizations that are vulnerable to public sentiments respond by appointing board members who are consumer advocates, prominent women, or minority spokespersons. The board of organizations whose legitimacy is in question often try to include winners of Nobel Prize, for instance, prominent military heroes, or similarly accomplished individuals. If you were head of a major security firm that had just pleaded guilty to several thousand counts of frauds and misrepresentation, you might try to restore your lost reputation by uh, enticing somebody with unquestioned credentials for honesty and integrity to join the board of directors. A related example could be the election of Saurav Ganguly as the president of board of control of cricket in India. BCCI has been criticized on account of corruption, favoritism, zero transparency, and its image is marred by several such controversies. To create a more credible image, to create a clean image of BCCI, it needed somebody who has an established reputation, an image which is free from any kind of corruption. So they wanted someone, an accomplished personality, a person with integrity, and a person with great resonance who can be eligible for the post of president. Thus, Saurav Ganguly was unanimously appointed as president of BCCI. The interlocking directorate, where two or more organizations share one or more directors in common, has been described as most widely used environmental management strategy. There is no shortage of studies that seeks to explain the prevalence of interlocks and the benefit it can provide to management. The evidence demonstrates extensive interlocking in the United States, particularly among the largest corporations with headquarters in New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles. For example, out of America's 797 largest firms, only 62 do not have interlocks with remaining 735 firms, that is only 8%. Among the top 130 US corporations, representatives from 13 firms consistently reappear on boards. Interlocking directorates are popular as they co opt market constraints. More specifically, it has been argued that they can facilitate horizontal coordination, facilitate vertical coordination, provide expertise, enhance organizations' reputation. What is this horizontal interlocking? Horizontal interlocking organizations can gain advantage through pricing, advertising, and research and development. Hence, they can act as informal means of coordinate plans between organizations. However, such interlocks can violate antitrust laws. Vertical coordination frequently exists between a firm and one of its supplies and increases the likelihood of availability of resources. Expertise is provided when outside directors hold information about other organizations or industry activities. Expertise can help the focal organization formulate strategies more accurately. Finally, an organization's reputation can be affected by who serves on the board and their organizational connections. Prestigious board members provide a more favorable image for organization. They can attract uh, customers as well as avoid problems with financial institutions, government regulatory agencies or the like. Now let us look at coalescing. When an organization combines with one or more other organizations for the purpose of joint action, it is called coalescing. Different examples of coalitions are mergers, joint ventures, and cooperative agreements. To fix price or split markets, these mergers often brought economies of scale to eliminate redundant administrative personnel by providing opportunities for merging technical and managerial expertise. But essentially, many mergers reduce environmental uncertainty by lessening inter-organizational competition and dependency. Chevron's acquisition of Gulf Oil created one less competitor in the oil industry. One of the most publicized joint venture in India is teaming up with the Indians and Japanese in manufacturing consumer cars. Maruti Suzuki joint venture brought much learning opportunities for the Indian firm Maruti Udyog Limited. They learned how to produce quality cars from Japanese manufacturers. Toyota Kirloskar joint venture is another example of a success story. Joint venture entertainment world tie up of Reliance Big Entertainment and Hollywood. Few such examples of coalescing. Joint ventures allow companies all over the world to improve competitive pressure and competitive positions. Mergers and joint ventures are legal means for organizations to manage their environment. In contrast, cooperative activities for managing the environment are illegal and certainly not accepted. But we have to acknowledge their existence. In the late 1980s, America was shocked to learn about such an illegal cooperation between electrical equipment manufacturers, executives from General Motors, Westinghouse, and several other large electrical manufacturers secretly met annually and agreed to a price fixing scheme. They divided up that year's major bid contractors among themselves and allowed the winner of each extremely high profit. When the scheme was uncovered, the companies were fined and some senior executives in these firms were imprisoned. Undoubtedly, such illegal tactics continue to go on today, but catching the culprit and proving restraints to trade is difficult. For instance, many states make it illegal for real estate agents to conspire to set up a fixed sales commission rate. But within these states, agents' commissions almost never deviate from the 6 to 7% norms. Selling real estate requires cooperation among many agents. Most use multiple listing services. This creates the opportunity for implicit corporate agreement to develop. Moreover, any agent who undercuts the norms will find other agents uncooperative. So, now we will look at another example like Compaq and others join forces against IBM. Compaq Computer Corporation is the leading manufacturer of IBM compatible personal computers. Like many others, clone market, Compaq has profited IBM's early decision to make PC specifications available in the competition at a very low cost. Maximum licensing royalty any clone maker paid was 1%. However, IBM introduced its personal system to computers in 1987 is also introduced a new and innovative. The bus is a device that controls how various parts of the computer communicate with one another called the microchannel. To reduce the competition for personal system on the microchannel as high as 5%. IBM's logic is of course was that since they set the industry standards, competitors had no choice but to negotiate licensing agreement on IBM's terms. However, there was another option which is open to the clone makers. They could break with IBM and set their own standards. That in the fall of 1988, Compaq's 9 clone makers announced that they had agreed on the standards for a bus that would meet or exceed the capabilities of IBM's microchannel. IBM controls 22% of the PC market, but the 9 clone makers Compaq, Tandy, Zenith, Data Systems, AST Research, Wise Technology, HP, Italy's Olivetti, Japan's NEC, and Epson America had 26.6% of the market. So, individually they knew that they could not challenge IBM, but their combined action could allow them to reduce their dependence on IBM. So, their alternative design standards will mean that there will be 3 main competitors in the market. The combined new standard, IBM's microchannel and Apple's new bus. Ironically, if this strategy worked, IBM could have ended up the cloners. Another kind of external strategy is lobbying. Let us understand what lobbying is. The Indian automobile industry wants the government to take decisions that will increase the sale of cars. Manufacturers in India, in the quest, the industry can stand passively by and hope ministers will voluntarily take action to protect the interest of automobile manufacturers. On the other hand, it can actively take its case directly to the New Delhi decision makers. Most likely, the auto industry would choose to take the case in their hand and control the environment. The major automobile producers, individually and collectively, would like to influence legislators to pass laws favorably to the auto industry interests. These lobbies might argue, for example, for the imposition of import restrictions, removal of safety equipment requirements, and overall corporate average fuel economy regulations and favorable tax treatment. Lobbying is thus the use of influence to achieve favorable outcomes. Lobbying is a widespread practice used by organizations to manage their environment. The mid of 2000s saw a market rise in the use of lobbying for land acquisition, and the new economic zones manufacturers lobbied with the government regarding terms and conditions to take the land from the farmers. Trade and professional associations actively lobby for on behalf of their members. So, some organizations even use the power of government to stabilize relationships um, in an industry. The airlines and the trucking industry historically were regulated, and many firms lobbied hard to maintain that regulation. This describes doctors and other professionals lobby state licensing boards to restrict entry, regulate competition, and keep their professions more stable. It is argued that regulations exist to protect the interest of general public. A strong counter argument can be made that government regulations maintain monopoly power and thus reduce environmental uncertainty in the hands of the regulated. Now, let us look at some of the guidelines for managing the environment. Success in managing the environment requires analyzing sources of uncertainty and thus selecting a strategy that the organization can effectively implement. As we noted earlier, the large size facilitates environmental influence. Certainly, DuPont is going to have influence in controlling the relationship with suppliers than a small chemical firm. Yet, most of the strategies which have been presented in this discussion and the previous section have widely been applicable in the business, and further, we will also represent some of the responses managers can make to reduce environmental uncertainty. However, this is not an all inclusive list of the strategies or the only options available to the management in order to control the environment. So, we present certain guidelines for managers to manage the environment, matching sources of uncertainty with the strategic action planned by the government, the competitors, or the unions. For example, examples of strategic actions when the source is government: lobbying for favorable treatment, recruit former government officials, relocate to different government jurisdictions. When there is competition, the strategic action can be advertising to build brand loyalty, select a less competitive domain. You can also merge with competitors to gain larger market share. When the source is unions, what we should do, the management should try to reduce uncertainty by negotiating a long term collective bargaining agreement to mitigate the conflict which is created due to unions. Appoint prestigious union officials to the board of directors. When the source of uncertainty is caused due to suppliers, what strategic action should be taken? Advise to use multiple suppliers, negotiate long term contract, and vertically integrate through mergers. When uncertainty is caused due to customers, the strategic action should be to advertise, differentiated price structure, ration demand, and change domain to where there are more customers. When the root of uncertainty is public pressure group, then in that case, the management strategy should be appoint critics to the board as employees, engage visible activities that are socially conscious. It will give a positive impact of the, or it will reduce the uncertainty which is caused due to public pressure group. To conclude the discussion, we have discussed about rationing strategy, we have discussed about internal and external strategies to mitigate in uncertainty arising in the environment. We have discussed about rationing and geographic dispersion strategies employed by an organization. Next, we have discussed about the external strategies such as advertising, contracting with suppliers or customers, co-opting through absorption, coalescing and lobbying to achieve favorable outcomes. Finally, we understood that the guidelines for managing the environment and the strategies employable by organizations in case of environmental uncertainty. Thank you.